Susan showed you the national trends, and then what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about what's going on in Chicago, because it very much parallels what's happening nationally. Chicago really is a leader in shared mobility. The coasts get a lot of attention, but we have a lot happening here. The big takeaway from this chart is that in fact, the population's flat, vehicles and vehicle miles traveled is going down, and the workforce from 2005 to current, the workforce commuting actually went up 3.9%, and traveling by transit went up 11%. So it was quite significant. And same thing, CTA ridership is up. And driver's license applications are down. So Scott Bernstein actually reviewed driver's license records and looked at the younger driver's licenses, and we saw this pretty significant trend of heading down in Illinois, in northeastern Illinois. So the other part of our shared mobility, of course, is our world-class transit system, which you know is a long-time existing system, and it carries a lot of people, 529 million rides in 2013. And then we have bike sharing, and bike sharing's only been around for 1 year, and we're the #2 system in the country after New York. We have 25,000 plus members. And it really has been transformative in the way that bike sharing is impacting us, and there are a lot of plans for expansion of that system. Car sharing, this is an estimate, but I think we have somewhere around 850 vehicles between the couple companies doing traditional car sharing, and so based on standard metrics, maybe that's around 50,000 car share members in Chicago, and then on top of that, we can also count that there are 430 peer-to-peer car-sharing vehicles listed on the websites of the companies that offer peer-to-peer in Chicago. And that map shows you where everything is located. Ride sourcing, transportation networking providers, there's been quite a bit of discussion of what that is, and we have everyone operating here in Chicago, we're happy to say, Uber, Sidecar, Lyft. This was a very, very quick snapshot of just seeing how long it took to get a ride last week in the middle of the day on a few days, and it was 2 to 14 minute wait. The red is 14 minutes and the greenish is lower down to 2. So ride sourcing is working in Chicago. And we also have lots of shuttles and van pools. So this is a really interesting new development. There have always been shuttles that have been run by employers, but there's a new service now that has 3 routes, that's what we've mapped here, that parallel the public transit system and provide a more upscale bus and a quicker time along the route. So, and soon Lyft Line and Uber Pool, we believe, are coming to Chicago. We'll maybe hear more about that. And those services provide shared rides. And so we'll learn about that. And van pools, of course, Pace has been running those for a long time, and we'll be speaking more about it in a little while. So the other thing that we have going for us here in Chicago already is we do have the venture card, kind of slow to get started, but it's operating fully now, and on a MasterCard platform, and you can even I've used my credit card to get on the CTA instead of the venture card, and so we do have this integrated at least with credit card fare media, and we also have real-time information, which we know from studies has made a difference both in customer satisfaction and also in part of that increase in transit use. Having real-time information and integrated fare media does make a difference. So this map, it brings it all together to show you kind of an overlay of what we have in Chicago. And this is really a work in progress. This is the kind of stuff that we are going to be putting together as part of our toolkits for cities. So we're going to have maps like this for multiple cities where we can overlay all of the shared mobility and then drill down to be able to look at where the opportunities are and what help in scaling shared mobility. So then I just wanted to highlight that the city has also been busy on a number of different policies. Susan talked, I think, a little bit about one of the Chicago's key policies that's already been enacted around the transportation networking providers and addressing the taxi industry. And I think it's really been it's kind of a leader policy in that it does also try to address the fees and the costs for the taxi industry, and now we are moving here in the city toward electronic dispatch for taxis for those who are interested. So, and then there are a number of task forces that the city is operating to try to look at public vehicles in underserved areas and bicycle and pedestrian issues as well. So there's a lot going on, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of the gaps. And of course the gaps are that, in fact, the transit that we do have doesn't serve everybody. There are transit deserts, there are places where it's in lower density areas in the suburbs where transit is infrequent. Weekend, nighttime service is not all it could be, and we know that 80% of the trips that people take are non-work trips. So those often occur during those times when transit is least available. And it's expensive to serve small clusters and in these lower density areas. We know that the most used transit lines, like the Red Line, are very overcrowded. It's really, I've found personally, it's impossible to get a seat at rush hour. And that the connections between providers are limited. And of course, we have our unique challenges in Chicago of multiple transit agencies, and we're not always all working together and headed in the same direction at the same time. So we have limited policies around street space in other cities like San Francisco, 900 car sharing spaces on the street. We don't have anything that would get us that kind of coverage in Chicago. We clearly need more infrastructure for safety and convenience. And you notice when you look at the shared mobility providers in Chicago, some of the key providers are missing from here. So we haven't fully covered it here. We don't have free floating car sharing. We don't have electric vehicle car sharing. I mean, we have electric vehicles in existing fleets, but some of these programs that exist in other places, we don't yet have a TDM program, where I know we're working on that, and we know slugging. So we know also, though, it's a messy process, right? And there are a lot of questions, and I just threw on the screen a lot of the questions that have come up and that we have to deal with. You know, there's the question, is transit threatened by these new providers, or is it actually a plus, and can it add to the equation? There have been all these issues raised about taxi holders. Will the new companies cover the neighborhoods? It's great, we're gonna have shared mobility, we can solve a lot of problems, but public agencies are mandated to serve a broad swath of the city. How do we make that happen? And will we really realize the benefits in terms of economic development, and can we get the impacts that we're seeking? So our premise is that shared mobility offers a lot of opportunity, that bike share can and does work well as the first and last mile, that the TMPs are serving areas that taxis won't go. They fill in for transit at night. Car sharing serves those non-work trips, that 80% of the trips. The shuttles have a lot of flexibility, so there's a lot of possibility there. And it's possible, if we do it right, we could actually reduce some of the funding pressures that we face on transit. So this workshop today is all about scaling the benefits. And we think it's really about how do we get the incentives right so that we have shared mobility integrated with transit and a system that provides a lot more options in the city.